It was a thunderstorm like no other. Residents had no time to plan or prepare for the massive wall of water that rushed down this canyon into Hilldale.
We're just greatly humbled by this, but we realize that this is an act of God, and this is something that we can't control. We have to take what we receive and do the best we can.
2 families had just spent the day in Maxwell Park up the canyon, but on their way back they were stopped by raging floodwaters that would eventually claim most of their lives.
And it came rushing down, and it actually came around behind the vehicles and engulfed the vehicles and washed them down into the creek bed.
The vehicles were located more than a quarter of a mile away, here, next to where the wash usually flows during a typical flood. But this was no typical flood.
I have never seen this kind of water through this ditch before. This one ditch up here.
A wall of water pushed the SUV and van down this wash, leaving them mangled and empty. In all, 16 people, mostly women and children, were washed away with the flood. Only 3 were rescued from the plight.
We know that there were 3 adults and the rest were children, ranging from 4 to teenagers.
This is definitely a tragic situation and by far one of the bigger ones we've ever had in Washington County, at least for a long, long time.
After the first 24 hours, the rescue efforts turned into a search mode. Several cadaver dogs were used in searching for those who were missing, as other search and rescue teams began combing the area in sections. The sheriff said searching had to be done on foot, as victims could not be seen from the air.
A couple of the individuals that were recovered yesterday, it was a portion of a foot sticking up out of the sand or hand. So from the air, there's not a whole lot that's available to us.
The lieutenant governor flew over the site to get a look at the damage by air. The area has been given a disaster declaration, which also allows for more resources.
Obviously, this is one of the worst weather-related disasters in the history of the state of Utah, and because of that, we're bringing the full resources of the state to bear.
The National Guard will soon be coming to help with cleanup efforts here in the Hilldale, Colorado City area. In the meantime, it'll be just up to residents to move forward. Family members and friends looked on as volunteers and others worked to clear mud and debris from what used to be a road. Others watched the river of water that had earlier swelled beyond its banks, rushing through culverts and over roadways, swallowing all in its path. It will be a tough road of recovery for the losses in this tight-knit community.
We just want Hilldale to know that we love you, that we're thinking about you, and that we're here to serve you.
It took almost 9 years, but it's finally paying off in a big way. This sea of solar panels used to be farmland. Now, thanks to the sun, it will soon generate solar energy to southern Utah customers and beyond. The Utah Red Hills Renewable Park by Scotech will be Utah's largest solar energy facility, with 340,000 solar panels housed here in Parowan. It will be able to produce enough power for over 18,000 homes a year. Governor Gary Herbert toured the solar park Thursday to see firsthand what's putting Utah on the map for solar power. He not only met with workers out in the park, but also with landowners who were involved in the deal. He soon found out just how much of an investment is being made to generate a sustainable power resource.
The total project cost of this is $180 million. So it's a large capital investment, and in fact what we've been told is that this is the largest capital investment to occur in Iron County.
The significant benefit I think that's going to come, though, is not only with additional energy, solar-powered energy, but with the property tax that's going to increase here by about $350,000 per year starting this end of December.
Even though they sold their property to the solar park, the Stowells are very much involved.
So a lot of our property that's part of the farm, part of the renewable energy park, was used for grazing, and we still will be able to graze sheep underneath the solar panels.
And with the sun shining more than 300 days a year in Iron County, solar energy is sure to be an economical and viable product for other investors in the future.
This is exciting new change. This is disruptive technology that we're seeing take place here today.
In the meantime, solar companies like Scotech are banking on the sunshine in southern Utah. Near Parowan, Melissa Anderson, KCSG News. At 77 years old, former Marine Chuck Hefner is doing all he can to get around. Living in Cedar City, Hefner is considered 50% disabled due to serious health issues.
I was 18 years old in 1957, and I was assigned to a unit called the Test Unit, Nuclear Test Unit.
It was here near Mercury at the Nevada testing site in 1957 where Chuck Hefner's life would change forever. Hefner was one of 60 soldiers chosen to board a bus late at night and sent to the Nevada test site. Hefner and other soldiers were placed in open trenches, approximately 6 feet deep, dressed only in their dungarees and helmets.
We had no breathing devices.
Hefner and his platoon were selected to witness an explosion of the Plumb Bob series. It was detonated off of a 500-foot tower.
And when the flash went off, you could see the bone in your arm.
He's had glaucoma surgery, prostate cancer, severe bladder problems, neuropathy in his feet and legs, heart and lung problems, as well as back issues. Married to his wife Dolores for 56 years, Chuck was never able to father any children. Hefner said the Veterans Administration wouldn't recognize he had radiation poisoning, let alone that he was even there.
And I have written people, I want that on my DD-214. I don't care if I die in the meantime, I want that.
Hefner is not only fighting for recognition of his duty as a shadow warrior, but for proper compensation through disability pay for his continued pain and suffering. On special assignment, Melissa Anderson, KCSG. It's called vaping. Some are using it to kick their habit of smoking traditional cigarettes.
Yeah, I've been able to cut back, and I feel a difference.
Stores like Cloud9 are becoming more popular among the vaping community. They're also becoming more regulated. In Utah, the electronic devices and e-cigarettes are already subject to the same restrictions as tobacco under the Indoor Clean Air Act. Poison control centers nationwide support legislation to regulate the safe packaging and correct labeling of what's inside the products.
I think if you look at the aggressiveness that the state of Utah is taking toward this, is a pretty good indication that it's here to stay.
But unlike tobacco cigarettes, e-cigs and e-liquids are not regulated by federal authorities. Calls coming into the Utah Poison Control Center last year showed the majority of exposures were children age 5 and under.
Oh, it's extremely dangerous. So as little as a teaspoon, a measurable teaspoon, which visualize that, it's not very much, it can kill a toddler.
The most recent data from 2011 to 2013 showed an increase in e-cigarette use among teens in Washington County.
Kids start using it, it pretty much wires their brain for addiction. If they're willing to experiment with electronic cigarettes, often it's a gateway type of drug.
Local police say just like tobacco, electronic use of nicotine products is prohibited among minors who will be issued citations. Owners of Cloud9 Vapors say they don't allow people under the age of 19 to even enter their store.
We do require ID on each purchase, and it's a pretty big deal to us.
But because the mixture of nicotine and intake is under the control of the consumer, it's up to the users to make their own choices. In Washington City, Melissa Anderson, KCSG News. It's an execution style called barbaric to those who oppose it. The death penalty by a firing squad is now Utah's secondary plan in the event that lethal injection drugs aren't available. St. George attorney Eric Kramer is a criminal defense lawyer, and although he hasn't had to defend anyone on death row in his 25-year career, he doesn't believe it's a final solution.
If you look at the death penalty closely, realistically, the only reason we have it is for revenge.
Lethal injection still remains the primary method for carrying out prison executions in Utah, but the lawmakers reinstated the firing squad method because the drug used to perform the execution is in question.
Companies that produce these chemicals refuse to send them to us because they know why we use them.
A spokesman for the governor, Marty Carpenter, released this statement about House Bill 11. Quote, "Those who voiced opposition to this bill are primarily arguing against capital punishment in general, and that decision has already been made in our state." Unquote. The last person to be put to death in Utah was Ronnie Lee Gardner on June 18, 2010. The 49-year-old Gardner was convicted on capital murder charges after killing a bartender and later shooting a lawyer and wounding a bailiff during a courthouse escape attempt in 1985.
He was executed and got to see the bullet hole in his chest, and that in itself was way barbaric, cruel, and unusual punishment. I could have stuck my fingers in his chest, all my hand into the holes in his chest. It was so gruesome.
They do give one of the officers a blank so that theoretically you would not know if you had the blank or not.
The governor is the only one who can place a stay of execution on death row inmates. In St. George, Melissa Anderson, KCSG News.